get this year because of other. But I like, the coming into the quietness of fall season into bleeding into winter.
I have to say summer, my name's Gloria, I have to say summer because I love the nineties and Anna.
Oh,
And
the
up?
only one.
Oh my goodness.
The hotter the better.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
I'm Jack and I go with spring because it's furthest from winter.
That's a good point. I like them all.
My name is David. I couldn't make up my mind between spring and fall. We couldn't really have fall without a spring, but yeah, but I like both, but I don't like extreme cold, well, extreme heat ever. And extreme cold, yeah, as I get older, that's not happening for me, so.
My name is Mary and I like spring.
I'm Joyce and spring is my favorite because it's, I like to see the grass and the blossoms, and the flowers come up.
Life coming back.
Yeah, I really enjoy spring.
Kelly and I like spring, for the same reasons. But I like to, it's kind of like a new beginning every year, you know, for everything that's coming.
My name is Danny. When I was younger, I liked fall, but now I like spring.
So that's
My name is Joan. I like fall. I like to see how the leaves change their color.
I'm Bob, and I would pick summer. There's more opportunities to do things in summer, I think. Seasons.
Oh, I'm Eddie. Hi, Eddie Morris, and, kind of like fall. Thanks. I like fall.
Hey. I'm Paula Robbins. I like fall too, and it's wish it lasts longer. Spring, so.
I'm Charlie, I like the summer, I like the garden.
Too hard.
Spring, but, like spring.
I'm Nancy Joe. I love fall. My birthday's in September. I love Halloween, so it's just best time of the year.
Diane, do you have a favorite? And, I think my favorite season is summer. I like warm weather. And my husband's a gardener, so I can sit in the yard and enjoy all the beauty of the yard and I don't have to do any work.
Oh.
That's
My favorite.
So today's presenter is Diane. She works out of the BCC office out in Crest Hill. But she also covers Kankakee County for now, but.
Great.
So, yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Where did, oh, I've got some brochures there too.
Yep,
Yeah.
great.
Am I good here? Okay, so the first thing I wanted to do, again, I can introduce myself. My name's Diane. So I'm with the Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program. We are housed out of the Blanchett Catholic Center, in Crest Hill, so it's right in Joliet. And we serve, Grundy, Kankakee, and Will counties. So altogether, we have little over 80 facilities that we go into. And I really want to thank you for what you do. I see a lot of new faces, which is awesome. I was the program manager for Senior Companion Program for 1 year. It was during COVID. It was not a fun year. But I talked to the Senior Companion Programs up in Will County, I don't know, about 6 months or so ago, and it just dawned on me that the work you do is so important. You help keep seniors in their home. That's where they want to be, right? So what you do is vital. However, sometimes it's just not possible to stay at home. And that's where the ombudsman program comes in. So I never thought about it before, but it's kind of a continuum of care a little bit. So Catholic Charities has a program that helps seniors stay in their homes. in the event you have to go into long-term care, assisted living or supportive living, that's where the ombudsman program comes in. So we still have a way that we can support and serve folks who just for whatever reason can no longer be in the community. So thank you for what you do, because I know how important it is, and I know it can be a hard job too. So, the long-term care ombudsman program, who we are, what we do, and how to utilize us. The ombudsman program is a federally mandated program. It's funded through the Older Adults Act. And, we have jurisdiction in long-term care, so skilled nursing facilities, rehab facilities, as long as it's not associated with a hospital, assisted living, and supportive living facilities. And our goal is to provide resident-directed advocacy services. The resident in a nursing home is always our client. That's who we serve. We don't serve the facility, we serve the resident in that facility, regardless of the source of the complaint. So if someone other than the resident calls us, the resident is always going to be our client, not the person who called with a concern. We are advocates working to improve the quality of care and the quality of life from the point of view of the resident. That's really key to my program, and I'm going to say it a couple times because it really is key. Point of view from the resident. We are not best practice. We don't go in and, see an issue or concern that the resident has and fix it. That's not what we do. It's from their point of view. I don't know what good care looks like to a resident, right? They have to tell me what good care looks like, and then we advocate for what they want. That's a hard concept for some people to grasp because we are not best practice. We'll go in, we can work with residents who, the family, the facility, they're just like, that's a mistake. That's not a good choice. When I started doing this work, I used to call it, you have the right to make a bad decision or a bad choice. And I stopped doing that because I realized as soon as I used the word bad, I was judging them. So it's really from the point of view of the resident. That's who we always focus on. So what do? We regularly visit long-term care facilities to talk with residents about their care and their quality of life. The federal regulation, again, is a federally mandated program. The federal regulation says we have to go in quarterly. So at least once every quarter, we go into our facilities. Our program up in Crest Hill, serving Will Grundy and Kankakee, last year we went into our assisted living and supported living facilities once a month instead of quarterly. The more we're in there, the more people are going to know us, the more they're going to trust us, and the more hopefully they'll reach out to our program. This year, we're going into our skilled facilities once a month. Federal regulation says quarterly, we're going in once a month. We provide education to community-based organizations and facilities. That's what I'm doing here today. So we not only talk about our program and the facilities we serve, but we go out into the community. Because what you do, your clients may end up in nursing home for rehab. You may have a family member. There is an ombudsman in every facility in every county through the state. So it's a good program to know about for yourself, for your clients, for your family members, for friends who you may see going into, whether it's long-term care or just some rehab in a facility. We meet with individuals on a one-to-one basis. So again, that resident is always our client. We engage in person-directed advocacy. That goes back to who's my client. It's the resident. Person-directed. They direct their care. It used to be, and it still is, it's a fight sometimes, but in a nursing home, all the residents would get up at the same time, right? CNAs would go in, they'd wake everybody up, they'd get them dressed, and they'd send them down to breakfast. Person-directed care means if you're not a morning person and somebody's getting you up at 6 o'clock in the morning, that's a good quality of life. So person-directed care, which is really what facilities are now supposed to be providing, means if you like to get up at 10, then you should be getting up at 10. There's a facility in my jurisdiction that's just starting this now, and it's called Natural Awakening. They don't wake a resident up for anything. If it's medication, they have figured out how to give that medication without waking up the resident. So that's really what that person-directed care means. It's from the point of view of that resident. We do not take action without the permission of the resident or participant. This one is really important, again, a cornerstone of our program. We need consent for everything we do. Again, I'm not best practice, so I don't go in and solve a problem. I work with the resident to figure out what the problem is and how they want it solved. So we get consent, I have to get consent from the resident for everything I do. If the resident has an issue in the facility and we want to talk to the administrator, I need consent to talk to the administrator. I don't go on my own and talk to people in the facility or other residents. It's always permission of the resident. We only work with residents who want our help. That's another key point too, I think, to our program. Again, if you go back to my client as the resident, if you call me, you know, because you have a family member, a friend, or your client, you know, your client is in the nursing home for whatever reason, and you think they have a problem. So you call me, I explain my program, I get consent from you. If you call me, I need consent from you to tell the person in the nursing home that you called me. So if you do, I say the name of the person who called. Sometimes people want to be anonymous, so I just say, you know, we received a call and I needed to come out and see how you're doing. After I explain the program to that resident, if they want my assistance, I can work with them. If they don't want my help, I go away. So that's a hard concept for some people to understand too, but if that resident is my client and they don't want my help, that's okay, I go away. If I can't take direction from a resident, and by that we mean, can that resident tell me what they want me to do? Do they understand what I do? And can they direct me, since I'm resident directed, can they direct me as to what they want to do or want my help with to solve that problem? We don't have any tool. We don't do an assessment. I don't have a test I give. We just go in and talk to the residents. And if, you know, by talking to someone, you can understand if they're, you know, understanding what you're saying and they can direct you what to do. If we cannot take direction, then we work with the power of attorney for healthcare. We can work with the healthcare surrogate or the guardian, whoever that decision maker is.
My husband is very ill right now, and he's been in the nursing home and now in the hospital. But we are from Iroquois County, but he goes to the nursing home in Kankakee. So what do you call a resident? Someone who's living in a nursing home in Kankakee County, or is it you call the resident that's from actually where they're from?
The facility they reside.
Oh, okay, and he could qualify because he goes to Miller.
So I can talk to you, I can talk to you afterwards, yeah, yeah, we do go into to Miller. I'm not assigned to that facility currently, but I've gone there in the past, so yeah, it's the county in which it resides, the facility resides. Does that make sense?
Resides, you call that the,
Well,
resides in one nursing home?
well, when they're in the nursing home.
Yeah,
So if your husband is in the nursing home in Kankakee, even though he lives and he's gonna return to Iroquois County, we can work with him because he's in the
so we
facility.
call that his residence.
Yeah,
Oh, I got it.
yeah, so sorry, yeah, it's some of that language,
He can get the help because Miller is Kankakee.
right?
Yeah, so I didn't know where you could
But
say
he was in
the
a,
residence.
yeah, he was in a cell resident, you're right, thank you for pointing that out. Because most of the people we work with, I shouldn't say that. In a facility, long-term care, it's either going to be a rehab, somebody rehab that's in there for a shorter amount of time, or it's someone who now permanently resides in the facility. So they're not gonna return to the community more than likely. So we work with both. And that's a good point too, because we only have jurisdiction inside of the facility. So I can only work with residents who are having an issue inside the facility, care concerns, somebody's stealing from them. You know, it has to be going on inside the facility. Once they return to the community, if something happened, you know, in the facility, I no longer have jurisdiction. That resident has to be in the facility in order for me to be able to work with them. So we do problem solving and complaint resolution to ensure that the residents' rights are honored. Again, you know, we work to resolve whatever problem that residents thinks they have. We educate and empower residents so they can advocate for themselves. This is a really important one, I think, because There's 4 ombudsmen in our program. We go into 3 counties. We have about 80, little over 80 facilities. So we're not in our facilities every day. So if we can really work with our residents to teach them how to advocate for themselves so that they know how to do it when we're not there. I think that's really important. So that's a big part of what we do is educate residents to advocate for themselves and their family members sometimes too, right? You know, or, you know, whoever it is. Ombudsmen are not mandated reporters. Does everyone know what a mandated reporter is? Yeah, because are you guys mandated reporters? Yeah.
Yep.
This one really confuses a lot of people. Ombudsmen are not mandated reporters. Everyone else working in that facility is, right? So they're surrounded by mandated reporters. I am not, and the way I always kind of look at it is because who's my client? My resident. My resident directs me to call APS or the Illinois Department of Public Health or whoever, then I do it, or I sit them to do it. But since I'm resident directed, I only do what the resident is directing me to do. Ombudsmen are confidential. This is another really key cornerstone to our program. We're confidential. Nothing that is said to us is ever repeated without consent. I need consent to repeat whatever I am told, whether it be a resident. We call it the complainant, whoever calls our program on behalf of a resident. What they tell me is held in confidence. If I work with anybody in the facility, what they tell me is held in confidence unless I have consent. And I have to ask for consent. Do I have your permission to tell so-and-so you called me? So that's another real cornerstone of what we do. We're confidential. Ombudsman access. So the federal regulations say that we have 24/7 access to facilities and residents. That means we can go in a facility 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Do we? Well, we can. And we have we have 2 volunteer ombudsmen, and we really try to have them go in on weekends because we don't go in on weekends. So it's nice to have a presence in those facilities in the weekend. Another thing about our access is, I don't have it on, I'm going out later, but I have an ombudsman badge. I have to have that badge on every time I walk into a facility. I have to sign in. I ask for what we call a roster. That is a list of all the residents who live in the facility and their room number. I don't need any other information. But the reason I get that is because if I'm there on a complaint investigation, we're confidential, right? I don't go into the facility and say, I'm here to see Mr. Smith, what room is he in? I have the roster now, I can find Mr. Smith, and I guarantee you, if I go into a facility and I went there to see Mr. Smith, I talk to 3 or 4 or 5 other residents while I'm there, just to help maintain that confidentiality. With the permission of the resident, ombudsman can access medical records, so if there's an issue, we can access their medical records with their permission, and we usually get this one in writing. A lot of our consent is verbal. If they want us to get their medical records, we're going to get a written release of information. This is a big one. The facility cannot interfere with the resident's right to visit an ombudsman. So that means, and this happens, we go into the facility and they're like, oh, wait right here, I'll let the administrator know you're here. You're welcome to do that, but I don't need your permission. You know, we have access to that facility. They also cannot follow us around. And they do that. They'll kind of follow us around to see who we're there to see, which is why we always talk to more than one person. If a facility interferes with the ombudsman coming into the facility, that's called willful interference. And they can't do that. It's a federal regulation. And I think a lot of times the facilities are trying to be helpful. Oh, can I help you find somebody who you're here to see? You know, and I show my badge. I'm the ombudsman. I'm just walking through. They should never know why I'm there, because I can go into a facility for that quarterly regulation, that quarterly visit. I can be there because I am there on what we call a complaint investigation. Somebody called me, so I need to go out and talk to the resident. Or I could have an hour between appointments and I need something to do. So I'm in 3 counties, I just go in and then I walk through the facility. Because again, I think the more often we're in those facilities, they're gonna know who we are and what we do. Only a resident can deny an ombudsman access to him or herself, so the facility can't interfere. But again, that resident has a right to tell me to go away, and trust me, they do. I've been kicked out of more than one, resident's room. That's all right. I say we got pretty thick skin. Ombudsmen are contacted by, so who calls us with complaints? And again, that complaint is, my call light's not being answered in timely fashion. My food is cold. Any of those things. Those are all what we call complaints. My medication, I'm not getting the right medications. I'm not getting my medications on time. The therapist isn't coming. I'm not getting showers. All of those things are what we would call a complaint. So we get contacted by residents, family members, facility staff, other social service agencies and advocacy groups. I think, for me, it's the hospice workers. There's a lot of hospice workers go inside nursing homes too. I've gotten calls from hospice workers, not on their patient, but on the roommate or somebody down the hall that they hear yelling for help when they're in there. So other groups, hospital personnel, again, mandated reporters. Hospital personnel are mandated reporters. So if somebody comes into the emergency room of the hospital from a nursing home and they suspect abuse, neglect, they're dirty, their hair isn't clean, they'll call us and tell us. They also have to call the Illinois Department of Public Health because that's the mandated reporter status. But they can still call us and we can go in and see that resident, see if they want our help. And if they do, how we can advocate for them. Public officials, the public at large, law enforcement. Until I started being an ombudsman, I had no idea how often police are called into nursing homes. All the time. All the time. All the time. Yeah, sometimes the resident will call the police and go, they didn't give me my medicine. Hey, yeah. And sometimes, that one's happened, and sometimes too, it's that cognitive, that loss of cognition. So they'll call and say, my car's been stolen. I don't know where my car is. So sometimes they'll get called in for that reason. What are some other ones that I've seen? Oh, sometimes there's, resident to resident, conflict. And the police get called in to separate them. So, and then hospice, there's my hospice one too. The only one I'd add to this list, you don't have to go back. The only one I would add to this list is bankers. Sometimes we get calls from bankers because on a weekend, a grandson or granddaughter, a niece or a nephew or a family friend go to the nursing home, they pick up the resident, they take them to their bank. And they try to get on their bank accounts, right? They either try to get on their bank accounts or they try to take out large amounts of money. So sometimes we do get calls from bankers too, with fears of financial exploitation. So again, they can call us, but that would also be a case where they would call Adult Protective Services as well. So some specific resident rights that you might find interesting. Residents have the right to appeal a discharge or a transfer notice. And I think in your world, what you want to be alert to, whether it's your client or a family member or a friend, is that a nursing home cannot discharge a resident that doesn't want to be discharged unless there's 6 reasons for it. And it's like non-payment, they no longer need the services, the nursing home can't provide the level of services they need. But you can't just kick them out. You can't just say you didn't pay your bill, you gotta go. There's a whole process, and it's a legal process called involuntary discharge. We'll get to it in a couple minutes, but the facility can never just put someone on the curb. You didn't pay your bill, I can't take care of you anymore, you have to leave. There's a process they have to go through. This one surprises a lot of people. Guardians and powers of attorney cannot determine who can or cannot visit the resident, regardless of the resident's wishes. We get a lot of family dynamic, issues, 2 sisters, one's the power of attorney, she doesn't like her sister. So she calls us and says, I'm the power of attorney. I don't want my sister visiting my mom. Actually, the only way you can do that is you have to have like almost an order from a physician, a letter from a physician stating that for whatever reason, a visit could be harmful to the resident, so they can't do that. We also get a lot, because we do work with guardians and powers of attorney. Power of attorney, or not the guardianship, that's already been established by the courts, but the power of attorney only comes into play when the resident can no longer make decisions for themselves. That's why one of the things I do is I go into the facility, I visit with the resident, and I determine if I can take direction, right? If I can take direction, I'm just working with that resident. But who's my complainant? The power of attorney, the daughter. And then, I'll call her back with permission from the resident, and I'll say, gosh, I met with your mom, and she's fine. She doesn't have any issue. She doesn't want me to work on anything. Well, I'm the power of attorney. Okay, thank you. But I'm gonna take direction from the resident. So that power of attorney only comes into play when that resident can no longer make decisions for themselves. Residents have the right to access their medical records. And this one, I hear this a lot. Residents can choose their own physician. A lot of times when you go into a nursing home, and I've been sitting in care plan meetings where the director of nursing says, oh no, when you come in a facility, you see our physician, and when you return to the community, then you can see your own. It doesn't work that way. Residents have the right to choose any physician they want to see. They do not have to see the physician who serves that community or that facility. I think sometimes here the issue can be transportation, right? Because most nursing homes will help get their residents to doctor's appointments. But if you're in Kankakee County and you have to go down to Northwestern in Chicago, they're not going to bring you, right? So that's where this transportation can sometimes become an issue. But the real right, because again, we're about resident rights. We educate, family members, residents on their rights. So they know what their rights are when they're in a community. And this is one of their rights. They can choose their own physician. I brought some brochures for you too, with my card on it, and this brochure will also outline the rights residents have when they're in communities. And it's really easy. The easiest way to remember it is it's the same rights you have to live in your community. You have the same rights inside the nursing home as you did when you lived in your home in the community. That part's pretty easy. So we have some ombudsman myths. The myth is ombudsman work in the best interest of the resident. Right? You'd think so, but we don't. We're resident directed. So the fact is, whenever possible, ombudsmen advocate for what the resident wants, even if it's not in the resident's best interest. And I always say there's a caveat here. That's part of our job, is to educate that resident so they understand the consequence of their decision. Like, I think a really easy one is a resident who's a diabetic. They want that cupcake. They have a right to have a cupcake. Now, a lot of the facilities will say, no, they can't have that. It's going to spike your blood sugar. And, well, did you educate the resident? And did you document it? And if you did those things and the resident still wants that cupcake, the resident has the right to have the cupcake. So even if it's not, and again, it's a judgment, right? Maybe I don't think it's a good choice. Doesn't matter. It's what that resident wants. So this is true, but I always add when they've been educated as to what the consequence of that decision is. Ombudsman may talk freely and openly with facility staff and family members in an effort to resolve concerns. We cannot do that. Ombudsman may work with others to help resolve concerns only with permission from the resident. Ombudsman must have permission from the resident to advocate on their behalf. And one of my favorite ones here is I'm working with a resident, they have an issue. We're figuring out how to address it. And I said, do I have your consent to talk to the administrator, the social worker, the director of nursing? You can talk to God if you can fix my problem. So, so that's what that one is. This is a big one. Ombudsman should be neutral third parties. Think that's true or false? False. It's false. Yeah. We're designed to represent the residents' concerns and interests. And again, it's a really hard concept for some people to grasp. It really is. It's why I like the program, but it's a really hard concept for some people to grasp. My favorite. Ombudsman's just stir up trouble. Yeah, sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's true. By resolving problems on behalf of residents, Ombudsman can help facilities identify little problems before they become big problems. And a couple things here, I don't have my badge, but my badge has the seal of the state on it. So that just means I'm certified. There's a state ombudsman in every state. That just means I'm certified by the state to be an ombudsman. I'm not the Illinois Department of Public Health. They're the regulatory agency. They hold the license for the nursing homes, supported living and assisted living. Actually, supported living is HFS, Health and Family Services, human. But I'm not the Illinois Department of Public Health. I don't go in and do an investigation and cite the facility if they're not doing something. That's what the Illinois Department of Public Health does. They're the regulatory agency. They hold that license. So if they go in and do an investigation and they deem that that facility is not following federal regulations, they can fine that. We call it a tag. They can do a tag, they can get a fine. All the way up to, if it's severe enough, they can shut down the facility, right? They can pull that license. That's the other thing about the ombudsman program that I think is really different. Some facilities and some families call us in because they don't want to call the Illinois Department of Public Health, right? Because that brings up retaliation, right? A lot of residents and their family members are afraid of retaliation. If I say something, if I stir the pot, if I cause trouble, if I call the Illinois Department of Public Health, I'm going to get retaliated against. And the truth is, residents have the right to bring up their concerns without being retaliated against. But the truth is, it exists. There is retaliation. It can be very subtle from, you hit your call light and somebody comes in, works there, and they turn off your call light. They can, you can run reports. Some facilities can run reports to see how long that call light was on and when it was answered. What they can't know is if the service was provided. So you can go in and turn the call light off. But you're going to assume that their resident got the care they wanted to, but they don't always. So that's retaliation, right? And it can be very, very subtle, not answering call lights or, gosh, I'm just gonna let that food sit there a little bit longer before I bring it into the resident. And it can be very subtle, and it can be very extreme. So sometimes by bringing the ombudsman in, if we can resolve things before they become bigger problems, we can do that. The facilities I really enjoy working with, the ombudsman program is a tool that they can use to help the residents get the care they want when they're in the facility. And I think that's the big thing. Some facilities, unfortunately, do not see us that way. Some facilities, we're a code. So we walk in the door and all of a sudden you're hearing, code blue, on code blue, or, they'll call the facility, call the administrator, the ombudsman's here. Okay. Let her walk through. But, so if a facility sees the value we have of really providing that firsthand directed care, use this as a tool. So don't see us as a threat. So involuntary discharges, I'm just going to go through this pretty quickly, but I think the takeaway is, again, if you're a client or a family member of somebody's in a nursing home and the nursing home says, come pick them up. We can't take care of them anymore. You just got in a fight again. Reason to take medications. We can't take care of them. Come get them. They can't do that. So involuntary discharges is a process in skilled nursing homes and the rehabs and assisted living. Ombudsman must be given a copy of the notice. Once we receive a notice of involuntary discharge, we contact the person to ask if they need assistance. We educate them on what the process looks like and that they have the right to appeal. This is the important part. Residents who receive an involuntary discharge have a right to appeal that discharge. They have 10 days to appeal it. We can help them do that. But that's going to start a cycle of events that actually lead to an administrative law judge making the determination whether that facility was correct in issuing that involuntary discharge. There's only 6 reasons, again, federal program, 6 federal regulations as to when an involuntary discharge can be given. And it has to fall under those. And then it's up to the facility to prove to the judge that they were correct in issuing that discharge. So, we can go past this one. I mean, that's really it. It's just the 6 reasons, of why you can do it. But an overview of the appeal process is the resident has 10 calendar days to file an appeal with the Illinois Department of Public Health. If you're in supportive living, does everyone know what supportive living is and assisted living? They're really the same. It's the same level of care. Does anyone have Heritage Woods, like Mantino, or are you familiar with the Heritage Woods? That's supportive living, right? Which means it's private pay, or they accept Medicaid, and their license falls under HFS, Health and Family Services. Assisted living, they fall under Illinois Department of Public Health, and they're only private pay. Skilled nursing homes, assisted living. Only.
What is a facility that is just
Assisted living in Kankakee, what's it called? Miller has an assisted living right next to their rehab.
Ascension.
Ascension, yep. Let's see.
Brookford. It's Brookford.
Right, yep, it is.
Mantino Springs,
Yes,
I worked there.
you do?
I did.
Oh, you do? Yeah. Have I seen you there? How long have you been there or worked there?
I, retired from there in November 2015.
Oh, okay, so no, it was before but that's one of the facilities I go into. Yeah, and they get sold. They're called Serenity now?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's called Serenity now. Residents have 10 days to file an appeal. One of the big reasons people appeal is that the resident cannot be discharged from the facility during the appeal process. So if you've got an involuntary discharge and you decide to appeal it, that it's usually 30 days. So the facility gives you a discharge and it says in 30 days, because of whatever reason, you need to leave. Skilled nursing care, they have to provide a safe discharge. So if they say we're not going to take care of you anymore, they have to find a place that will. Assisted living does not. But if a resident files an appeal in a skilled nursing center or assisted living, during that appeal process, the facility cannot kick them out. You have to wait until the administrative law judge makes a final determination, and that can be anywhere from a month to 6 months. We never really know. But part of the law process is there's a pre-hearing, an evidentiary hearing, and then the final order comes from the judge. The first time I did a involuntary discharge, I thought the judge, because you watch TV, I thought the judge was going to make the final determination, during the hearing process, like I was on the phone and I was going to hear what happened, and it actually takes about 30 days. Prior to COVID, the hearings used to be held in the facilities. And then COVID hit, so they started doing them on WebEx, and unfortunately, they have not gone back to doing them in person. I've had one in person since COVID, and I really think that's a shame because the hearing is held in the facility where the resident lives, right? But that's no longer done, for the most part. There's administrative law judges, they preside over the proceedings. And then about 30 days after the hearing, they will send the final decision on the appeal, and it's either that they side with the facility, that the facility approved, and they give, just like everything else, they have to give evidence that the facility was correct, and in that case, then the resident does finally discharge to somewhere else. But and this has happened lots of times, the administrative law judge says, no, facility, you didn't do your job. You didn't do your job in proving that you did everything you were supposed to do before you issued that involuntary discharge, because it should always be the last resort. And then the resident stays.
In that case.
Mhm.
as ombudsman, pay particular attention to that.
I'm sorry?
In that case, if someone wins their appeal,
Mhm.
would you pay particular attention to that resident? Because there's a real.
Yeah, right, so what I hear you saying is, boy, are they gonna retaliate against that resident because they stayed? I've watched some webinars, there's Justice and Aging, I think they're out of like the East Coast, the DC area. They actually say that, I've been on webinars that say residents who win their appeal sometimes get better care. And I, thank you. Right, and because they've learned that residents can advocate for themselves, so they have people that are gonna advocate for them. So I always thought the same thing, but in some cases, you know, I think it's Justice and Aging says that sometimes they do get better care.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, I will also tell you, there's really two kinds of involuntary discharges. One is, it's the typical one, it's 30 days. So that's when the resident stays in the facility if they choose to appeal, and they don't have to appeal. As an ombudsman, I tell them what their right is, because I'm about resident rights. They make the decision whether they appeal or not. Some residents say, I don't like here, I don't want to stay, you know, I'll go somewhere else. So, but if they do, then we go through that process. The other type of involuntary discharge is called an emergency discharge. That is when it's typically issued when the resident, they say the resident, they can't take care of the resident, or that resident is a harm to other residents. So there's been some resident to resident conflict, right? Or the resident tried to hurt themselves and they can't stay there. So typically they send them out to a psychiatric hospital. That's called an emergency discharge. That means the facility is not taking them back. And when I get my discharge, I look at it to see what kind it is. If it's a 30-day discharge, the resident should still be in that facility. If it's an emergency, they more than likely are in some kind of hospital setting, psychiatric hospital. They still have the right to appeal. So I still have to figure out a way to talk to that resident who's in the behavioral hospital. If I can talk to them, explain their right to appeal. If not, I work with their power of attorney. During an emergency discharge, involuntary discharge, the resident does not return to the facility because they're really, the facility is saying it's really dangerous. We can't take care of them. The key to know is they still have the right to appeal. They just can't go back to that facility until, if they choose to appeal, until the appeal process is played out. If they appeal, process plays out, the judge says, oh, no, you weren't right, take that resident back. In theory, the resident goes back. Have I heard of cases where the judge said, take the resident back and they don't? I have. So they still have the right. So some of our resources, we have a website. How to contact an ombudsman in your area. If you're in, all the numbers are on my brochures there too, but you can also get a hold of Jackie. She can always get a hold of us. So it's kind of nice again to be in kind of that family of programs. That access to, through our programs is fairly easy, but it's also confidential, right? So if Jackie calls me and says, hey, one of my clients, my senior companion clients is in the nursing home, and I get involved, unless I get consent from that resident, I can't tell Jackie I'm working with her, I'm not working with her, this is what we're doing, this is what we're not doing. So even though we're the same agency, I'm confidential. If Jackie calls me, if you call me, unless I have consent from that resident, I can't tell you, I can't confirm that I am or am not working with that resident or what we're doing. I can ask for consent. You know, I can ask that resident, oh, is it okay if I talk to your senior companion? And if they say yes, then absolutely I would. But just because we work for the same agency doesn't mean I can share information. So the State Ombudsman Office has created what they call Resident and Family Support Council. It's a webinar. It occurs the first and fourth Tuesday of every month. And they just cover all kinds of topics about living in a nursing home, living in assisted living. What I really like is that it's really for residents and families. I get on it sometimes, but, it's really, you'll hear a lot of residents and they, this is where they live. So on these meetings, they have a platform to say what's going on in their facility and sharing. So it's for the residents and families, but they've got some really good topics. And then there's a YouTube channel where all the old, support council webinars are held. Yeah. Want to reach out to the ombudsman when you have questions about resident rights, and again, it's pretty easy. You have the same rights as the facilities as you do when you live in the community. Anytime you have concern about a resident that the facility is struggling to resolve, anytime you think a resident needs an advocate, including care concern issues, and when considering a facility initiated discharge. So call us or refer residents to us as soon as possible so we can work towards a resolution. And again, always from the viewpoint and the direction of that resident. And then how can we work together to ensure that residents' rights are being effectively listened to? And contact us anytime. Reach out, questions, answer, questions, concerns. And I know if I remember right, from your senior companion program, if one of your if one of your clients goes into the nursing home, you can continue to see them for a short amount of time if they're going to be returning to the community. Right,
Yeah.
is that still?
Yeah, there's some unique cases where we can also go into assisted living.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm just learning more about it, but with kind of case by case basis, I'm really been a supervisor. But yes, if someone's just going for short-term rehab, we have some people who are, short-term rehab and still getting visits.
yes.
Yeah.
That's great. So just because, if you have a client, they go to a nursing home, they're gonna live there, you can't see them as a companion anymore, or as a client, you still might go and visit them, right? It doesn't count in your program, but you've got a connection to them, so you still might visit them. So, keep our program in mind when you do that as well. And I did your program during COVID. It was very hard, right? But actually, it's why I went back to the ombudsman program too. It really is. I was an ombudsman, COVID hit. And they're telling me I can't go to a nursing home. They wanted me to stand outside a window with a whiteboard.
For
Well,
ombudsman?
yeah. Well, how do I work with somebody on a second floor if I have to stand outside? And I'll never forget, I was on a webinar and because it was the beginning, I'm not judging anybody, right? But it was a very difficult time. People didn't have information. Ombudsmen we were not allowed to go inside the facilities. I had residents calling me saying, the whole place is filled with COVID. We're not allowed out. We're not allowed out of our rooms. So who's bringing the COVID in? It's the workers coming in and out, right? But we weren't allowed to go in, so it was a really difficult time. And at that time I thought, well, I can't do my job. So there was an opening in senior companion program. So I went over there and I figured, well, I can't do that during COVID either because you can go see your clients. We couldn't get together for meetings. So, when an opening came up, it was at the end of COVID to go back to the ombudsman program. I did because I really felt like no population seniors was affected by the COVID, but people living in facilities, no access to their family members, dying alone. Family members calling us. It was really difficult, and I felt like COVID was first ending. Like, wow, I already have the skill, right? I don't have to go through the training again. I don't have to get certified. I really felt like I could hit the ground running and help people who had been cut off from their families and all their services. So that's how I ended up back in the ombudsman program. But I think that's it. Does anyone have questions?
Are you definitely going to give us all that information?
I have brochures that have our information. You are welcome, Jackie, if anyone wants a copy of that.
I can
you
do
are
that.
welcome to-
Yeah, I can
copy
email it out. Yeah.
So Jackie can get you the whole slide and I have.
Yeah, my mom's facility, died in 98. She was there about 4 years, I think. And when she went in, she was still able to make pretty good decisions, but probably in that last year and a half, dementia was, clouding her judgment, that kind of stuff. When you're, let's say you've had a client for 3 or 4 years and you realize that they're moving into some realms of not really knowing what to do, and education is no longer, what do you do with that person? I mean, you're supposed to be their advocate, but
Yeah.
if
So-
you're not making value judgments.
Yeah, so 2 really important things. One, we don't stay with the resident for like 4 years. We're not caseworkers. Like, so we get, and that's a really important distinction. I forget to bring that up a lot. We have what we call cases. So either resident or family member calls, that's our complaint. We really work to resolve that issue as quickly as we can. Once we resolve that issue, we don't go back, you know, they don't stay kind of on our caseload, if it will. Now, we know who they are, and when the facilities will wait, we'll say hello, we'll see how things are going. They know us now, their family members know us, we can open up other cases with them, but we don't kind of keep them on our caseload. In those cases, I've had cases where, I recently had a case where a resident was issued an involuntary discharge. And I went, no, it was prior to, the facility told me they were going to issue it. And I went to see the resident just to educate her, like, you know, if this issue doesn't get resolved, here's what they can do. They can issue you an involuntary discharge. So I educated the resident on that. How are things going here? Found out her medication was being given late, right? So I worked with her on her medications, and we got her medications resolved. I could take direction from her. She could tell me she wasn't getting her medications. She knew how many she got a day, and she knew when she was supposed to get them, and she told me she wasn't getting them. So we worked with her, and the facility got it resolved. Then involuntary discharge eventually got issued, so maybe it was less than a month later. I couldn't take direction from her on the involuntary discharge. She didn't remember she got it. So even within weeks, right, I can take direction about medication. She was clear as a bell. She wasn't getting the medications. We went back and looked, she wasn't. But she didn't have the capacity to understand the complexity of the involuntary discharge, and she didn't remember she got it. So within the same month, I took direction from the resident on one issue, and on the other issue, I had to work with her power of attorney for healthcare. So it can really depend. And what we've learned the hard way too is if I can't take direction from a resident, then I need the power of attorney for healthcare, not finances, healthcare, or guardianship papers. You know, there were times when we had family members say, oh, I'm her, you know, especially a spouse, oh, I'm her power of attorney. They just kind of, and I said, oh, okay, that makes sense. We now get copies. We will ask, you know, we will ask for a copy of that power of attorney to make sure we're taking direction from the right person, because it isn't always the spouse and it isn't always the oldest child. So we will get that paperwork. We will always ask for that paperwork. And the other good point about that too is if we cannot take direction from the resident, we've been running into this a lot lately. There's no power of attorney for healthcare. There's no guardianship. Well, I'm resident directed. Who do I take direction from? I have to go to my state ombudsman and ask for consent permission to advocate for a resident who cannot advocate for themselves, who cannot direct, and they do not have a power of attorney for healthcare or a guardian. I just finished a case that was like that. So it's not that I can't help them, but the integrity of the program is resident directed. So somebody has to direct me, and in those cases, we have to go all the way up to the state ombudsman and get permission.
Do you guys help with guardian, like petitioning for guardianship?
No.
Okay.
No, but we will get you to the resources that can. And it really depends on where it's coming from too. Sometimes there's an active adult protective services cases going on. Sometimes they do. We also refer to Prairie State Legal Services for free legal services as well.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just out of curiosity, if you're dealing with a care facility and they're not cooperating with you, either they're supervising you or they're not responsive, what's your recourse in that situation?
So typically I would educate them and I would bring in the willful interference regulation and show it to them. You know, sometimes some facilities are really just trying to protect their residents, right? again, if I go into a facility once every quarter, people might not know me. So when I go in once a month, they pretty much get to know me, but I never have a problem when I'm walking down a hallway and I don't care at all when a nurse goes, excuse me, can I help you? I just show them my badge, it's the ombudsman I'm walking through. They're there to protect the resident, so I get that. So I will really try to educate. And again, I have had cases where the facility would not cooperate and I had to go to the state, you know, I go to my regional ombudsman who goes to the state ombudsman. And, you know, sometimes they have to get involved. They'll either make a call or write a letter, or send an email. And we're not enforcers, you know, so that's the difficult part about it. But the state ombudsman can always, you know, let the Illinois Department of Public Health, that I can't. But she might be able to. I think education, usually with education, they understand.
My brother is started with assisted living, but his dementia is getting much worse. So they put him in a memory care unit, and I'm his healthcare power of attorney.
Okay.
So they come to me for all of his decisions right now. The power of attorney said, you know, his funds will be depleted. He's private pay right now in 8 months. This facility he's at goes to Medicaid. So,
Do they accept me?
But the power of attorney is, for some reason, he sent me a message, you know, we're concerned about that. Well, if you accept Medicaid, why is there a concern? You've eaten his money up. What are my rights? How can I help him stay in that facility? What?
So that's a pretty specific, don't tell me the facility, but what county?
Oh, this is just an educational question,
Okay.
because he's in New Jersey.
Oh, okay. Well, but there's an ombudsman in New Jersey. You know, so you can, you know, I'm not real sure, you can just, you know, Google it and find the ombudsman in that area and you can talk to them specifically. But again, it's assisted living, so they should.
Well, now he's put on a different floor, the memory care unit.
Yeah, and that's why I would really direct you to the ombudsman who knows that facility, just to know, because it's usually driven by level of care.
Yes.
But you
he
really-
did correct.
Yeah, we really need to look at who's the regulatory agency, who has, you know, who has the oversight. But assisted living, they can't just call you and say, oh, he stopped paying, come get him. They can't do that. Assisted living doesn't have to find a place for him to go if they can no longer afford it. It's called a safe discharge. Nursing homes do, but assisted living do not. But a nursing home has to have what we call a safe discharge. So if you're not going to take care of that resident anymore, you have to find a facility that's going to be able to. And skilled assisted does not have to do that.
Even though he's in memory care.
Again, I don't know where, I don't know what, I don't know what the licensing agency is over them because that's really what drives it.
How do I just Google ombudsman for New Jersey? Or for the county he's in?
Yeah, you know, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, there's an ombudsman website, so you should be able to get access from it too. There might be some information in here that can help you. Anything else? All right, Jackie, you want me to just leave these here?
Could you pass them around? so
We
people
can
can-
pass them around,
Yeah,
sure.
thank you so much. Oh, that's okay. We have time.
This is so much nicer to hear.
Yeah, if you're looking.
Oh, good.
If you're looking for positive reinforcement.
Great.
it's a whole lot better than the echo chamber.
What?
Well, that's.
I did. I got you. Yeah. You want to hold on? It's a good piece. We're gonna take about 5 minutes if you need to get water, go to the bathroom, talk to Diane, and then I'll get on with the announcement piece of things. Yes, just needs to make sure.
Can I get a hold of you? You're welcome.
I was in civils. He was the leader.
Yeah, we're talking about that, yes. And I think I was surprised. Yeah.
Oh, you're matching. That's person that this person. Yeah, okay, they're just out of order that time. No, it's not just okay that they're out of order, I'm just making sure. Okay. You're not. And I told them. On the 21st, but I came on the 23rd, this is one for me, it's like. It's on that for that's not an optional thing. There's not. Down very much. Yeah. It's all in the. And you'll nothing. I really want to just. What you. Yeah. Perfect's going for the field. They're going in my dad undershot. So it's not. Yeah, they just do the TV on, so she has her TV on. Let's leave it out because you have to. And sometimes. Yeah, it's a which goes so fast. Yeah.
I don't.
She can see.
Is, well,
And they understand. I do understand. I don't know. Because when I don't supposed to move the right way. And I did say something. She's a.
I have to be trying to think about it.
So we have to ask.
Okay.
I just.
Every once in a while, you're doing this. You might be.
Well, you just have to actually, everything she said. was
Actually,
very you know, she would say to him, you wouldn't have to reiterate for us. So,
But no, it's great. I look forward to Mondays and Fridays.
I just wonder how you feel about
When he's such a gentleman. He really needs me for dinner. He makes me want to see him. You know.
wow.
Boy.
Just a kind.
Yeah.
So.
When they tried it.
I say something.
Mondays and Fridays.
2 hours. It's great. Thanks.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I'm glad there was others who popped up in there.
No mess on the
Such a
church.
fun day. But she was sure I want to leave. She.
Well, I'm concerned for your country research.
And I.
You should keep.
Yes, I'm coming back Monday.
And she looked forward to it, and then she will say, what did you do this week? As these are your scriptures, there's several questions.
Does she still sit kind of in the corner off the way?
She sits right where she was when we.
Yeah, well, that is kind of far away from the seating as
Well,
well.
I sit over in the TV's. And then, on the smash, switch to the other side, because then I can get something out of the TV. No, it's going well. And I'm so happy that one day Robert went. Okay. He usually goes out and does the walk. But the one day he went and ran the errand.
Dynamics.
He went shopping, and I felt good because I thought, if I need to lose the certain in my there.
Yeah,
Pushed him.
it's a visit, but it's good that you feel safe.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense that you would stay laid out as a making sure you were situated and she felt.
Yeah, it was a good man.
Now.
Because I said, the groceries go so fast. They go faster there than they do.
Oh, yeah, okay.
No, first,
Yes.
first, I sit and watch TV. And I really don't think she needs a companion.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, they move fast, they move. Well, she did not. Yeah, she was closer, yeah, she was. Oh, maybe, yeah.
Fill out that survey for me.
But that.
Yeah, if you can fill it out survey, I'll give you your stuff. So during, sorry, during this break, if you want to just fill out the front back, and I'll give you your slip.
Thanks for checking.
Yeah.
You want some? Actually, I'm sorry, my screen's going, I should have been.
Next time.
Yeah. You were in. Yeah, it's cool. No, the other. Yeah. I answered the question, I heard.
But the thing is, you'll get this thing, it's being done, such lives, these things, something separate lives. Don't try and have it shake all in a lot of cases, you sort of do. It's a lot of cases, it's a lot of the things are being told, really.
She could,
I don't think there's any easy answer.
Right.
But I don't. If you believe and you logically care. You need on the same section. And be what you don't sort of say, somebody reading.
Why go back?
You know, so. I think it's.
Yeah.
She said.
Okay, yes.
I said, yelling at them. She said, but then they still did. And then she know we was in the fight. I mean, she's on her own. Because of the passion, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great issue.
So she knows what's going on. She's okay. And she can look.
Okay, if it's on your list,
So
They're in here.
yeah, right, exactly.
They're. That's.
you have to get this.
Somebody knows what's right. Oh, yeah.
You know, I can't know. What's the issues?
Yep, yep. It's 4 hours for every holiday, yep.
Conversion theory.
Yeah.
There's no.
Well,
Okay, that's fine. No worries, you can just email it or send it in. Okay.
She's been in there.
Today, good. Okay, very good.
She's right.
Great, sounds good to me.
I
Can't be.
signed.
Right.
Yeah, we get paid for those things.
Well, she's. I flipped it with yours.
Her POA. And she's.
No, I still bored. It's just, that's just how I say this. That's what. But anyway, I'm not gonna do that. I said, it's so modern.
Okay. Take it out, that's perfect, we'll get your next one, and that's, it's or you can mail it. Thank you.
But I think.
Also, she. Yeah. Because it needs to have more.
All right, we're gonna get going with announcements. That was a little longer than 5 minutes. Got caught up in chatting. Okay, can everybody hear okay in this space? Okay, the acoustics feel a little better than the big gym at least, so that's encouraging. Okay, so Diane passed around her brochures. I'm happy. I also emailed everybody the PowerPoint from today, so if you want that information, I've already sent it out. I'm grateful that she was able to be with us. We don't typically go into facilities, but it's good information to have. So, okay. A few housekeeping things in the sanctuary. The church requested that all the drinks have lids on them. So we have coffee cups with lids, even your water, they asked to have lids. If there's a spill, just let me know and I'll clean it up afterwards. That was part of the agreement. So I know where the vacuum is and all the cleaning materials, and I'll take care of those later. A couple other things that didn't make it into the agenda. In your packet is an invitation for our holiday recognition. That's December 10th. So that will take the place of in-service meeting in December. Closer to Christmas is just too late. So we moved it to December 10th. And that will be lunch, and it'll be combined with a couple other volunteer programs. Just so you're aware of that. We do need an RSVP, and there's an RSVP on there. So you can call the number or volunteer for aging. Email. You can email to RSVP there.
ACC, but where?
Great question. No one has told me yet. But I will tell you once I did ask. Oh, yes. My best guess is it's in the Iroquois room, but my plan is once I have that, I will email everybody and get people calls. Just so there's a certain, great question. Thank you. Okay. The other one. Yeah, correct. That's okay. That's okay. Yep.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, so the luncheon takes the place of our regular in-service meeting.
Okay.
Because it's on a Tuesday, it's a little bit different. If you can't make it, that's okay. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, and we can bring our clients on this week.
You can bring your client to the one on the 21st of November.
Oh.
You should not bring clients to the volunteer luncheon. It won't make sense to them because they're not volunteers. Yes, I apologize. There is a free lunch on the November 21st. That is something that you could bring clients for. You just need to RSVP, excuse me, to Mackenzie Joe so she can order the correct amount of food. Mackenzie Joe, when is the RSVP end date for the 21st?
The 19th.
Sounds good. Yeah, and free lunch. So those are a couple things that didn't make it into the packet. So any questions about either of those? Great. We have had some growing pains with Mackenzie Joe joining with timesheet processing. So we've had too many hands and too many places to receive timesheets. So we are going to try a new process where it's a little more streamlined. So you now have 3 options. You can email it, but please only email it to AmeriCorps So that is on your agenda. When it comes to Mackenzie, Joe and I, for some reason, it goes to spam. So we've had a couple people who didn't get paid on time because it went to spam or junk and we had no idea. So we apologize for that. It has not been doing that in the AmeriCorps seniors inbox, and we all checked the spam and the junk in that one. So that kind of alleviates that issue. And then you can mail it or drop it off in the mailbox at Community Cup here. If you want copies of it, you need to take it to the KCC office and then they email it to the AmeriCorps senior. But we don't have a secretary here and we are often not here, so we're not able to provide those copies. So those are the 3 options. Email it to the AmeriCorps seniors inbox, drop it off or mail it to Community Cup, or take it in person to the KCC office. Yeah, Charlie. Yes. Yes, that I should have put that on there. That's fine too. Because we're here to collect them. We're just trying to alleviate. Previously, there were like 5 different emails that it could go to, or my text, or 2 different buildings, and so kind of trying to streamline it. Yes, Sister Marianne.
If it's mailed and you don't get it, do we get a notification at all that it didn't show up?
If we don't receive it at all, or if we receive it
If
late.
we mailed it and we noticed the stipend didn't go in bank,
Yeah.
do we get a notice that you didn't get the timesheet or?
We typically, if we don't receive it at all, we do give you a call.
Okay,
We might not realize it till a month later.
okay.
If we just receive it late, we typically don't reach out to
So
you.
you should have 2 on my bank account, and this time I only had 1.
You just had 1. Okay.
The other
Yeah.
one's traveling. I usually mail it here to this address.
It may have just been late. I
And
can,
I could be off on that.
yeah. I'll check. Let me write it down. All right. Okay. Thank you for asking. Okay. Because we're both available part-time, you already know that I'm very hard to get a hold of. So thank you for your patience with that. But if you're, sending it outside of those areas, your paycheck might be late. That has been the theme. So we're trying to kind of cut down on those mistakes on our end and kind of streamline it. Okay. Our client waiting list in Kankakee County is 18, so that's down, which is amazing. And we've been working to onboard new volunteers. Mackenzie Joe has had so many new volunteer interviews, and actually 12 people who were interested in Iroquois County to volunteer recently. So that's mind-boggling. Yeah, really cool. And then our wait list in Iroquois County is currently 6 people. So both of those have been reduced a month in the last couple months. So that's exciting. Handbook reminder about timesheets. We receive federal and state funding that are dependent on timesheets. So, which is why I get after you if I don't get them. We have to turn in not actual timesheets, but reports based on the timesheets to continue to receive our funding. And that's kind of how it's determined how much we receive. State clients, we get fee for service reimbursement. So that's why we have the calendars to track. So all of that goes into our program budget that enables us to pay stipends, mileage, staff, etc. Just to give you just kind of a background about why we do those and how they are important. We do recommend that you write in your hours on a daily basis as you're visiting. That kind of just helps it keep on track. Some people don't do that, and if you have a system that works for you, that's okay too. But that's the general recommendation. And then on the second page, I included the minute breakdown for anyone who's wondering and just needs a refresher on that too. Does anyone have timesheet questions in general? Yes.
Okay, so, signed by the site student.
Yes, so that's either Mackenzie, Joe, or I. We sign it when we receive it.
But if we're sending it to, if we're emailing
Mm-hmm.
that organization, how do you get it?
We print it and sign it, or Brian
Oh,
prints
somebody
it.
said-
It comes, so that AmeriCorps Seniors inbox is checked by me, Bri, and Mackenzie, Joe. So we, and that's, we just all have a more streamlined place.
Oh.
We print it and either Bri signs it or we do. Yeah, good question, good question. Any other timesheet questions? Yeah, Kathy. No, if you don't receive the mileage, you don't, yeah. Yeah. Good question. I saw the confused look. Yeah. Any other timesheet questions? Yeah.
It's not a timesheet question.
Okay.
Will we get a notice about our medical annual?
Yep. So great question. I do quarterly compliance and I always send letters. So sometimes, you'll get a letter, you know, about either your auto insurance, your driver's license, your physician's authorization. And then before our January in service, I always try to send out a letter about our annual income review. So that's another part of the compliance piece. Yes, good question. On our end, we have a whole bunch of trackers for all of this that I go through every month. Okay. The upcoming pay schedule is there. One thing to note is my graph cut it off, but the December 1st through 15th, excuse me, 1st through 15th timesheet is due Wednesday, the 18th. Because of the holiday, it bumps things back a little bit. So that's just a little bit different. And then my graph accidentally cut it off, so I wanted to let people know that too. Just a deviation from the norm because of the holidays the following week. Okay, I still do have the cell phone number, and I just check it on the days that I work, so I'm checking it throughout today, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And then, our next in service is the holiday recognition. So we already talked a little bit about that. It is at 11 o'clock, so it's not at 9:30. It's at 11 o'clock, which is a little bit closer to lunch. And as I have more details about the specific room that it is in, I will let people know. The next holidays are Thanksgiving and the day after Thanksgiving. And then for advisory committee members, our next meeting will be February 5th. And Bri will send out more information about that once we get closer. Any questions about any of that? Okay, blank stares. Does